The network was started up as a reaction to the fact that the EU developed its Mediterranean policy with all the states around the Mediterranean, and it landed on something called the Barcelona Declaration in '95, which was very interesting. It was a period after the fall of the wall of the East and Western blocs, and there was a lot of hopes for the future in the world, and there was different regional policies that were developed. And in this region, it was this Mediterranean policy of the EU, where all these countries committed themselves to promote human rights, democracy, and so on. After this conference, there was a number of more small meetings or conferences in different countries where people met to discuss what this was about. And in Denmark, there was a conference where there was a Moroccan gentleman called Schade-Poulsen, who worked for a human rights organization, and the Danish director of the Institute for Human Rights. And they felt that this thing looked a lot like the Helsinki process that helped to break down the wall between the East and the West in the 80s. And also the Barcelona Declaration is modeled on this Helsinki Declaration with different chapters and so on. So the idea was that the organizations in the South would very much like to link up to a democratic and human rights abiding Europe, and the organizations in the North would very much like to know more about the conditions in the South and work with them on migration and refugee issues. So the idea was to say, this is interesting for us because we have a human rights instrument coming up, but this instrument will most likely not develop if civil society do not mobilize, as it did around the Helsinki process with the Helsinki committees. So why don't we bring together human rights NGOs in the North and the South to learn more from one another, learn to know one another, and jointly influence this instrument and use it as a platform for human rights promotion. So from the beginning, it was a bottom-up thing. It came really from civil society. The Danish Institute had a number of contacts in Europe to European NGOs, and the Moroccan gentleman Schade-Poulsen had a number of contacts through his work with Article 19 to human rights organizations in the South. And they brought then together a group of 15 for a meeting to explore whether it was interesting for them. And out of that meeting was established a steering committee that from organizations from the North and the South that worked for almost a year to define statutes, to define an action plan, and to find out who we should invite to join the network. And it ended in a general assembly in December '97 with about 50 participants, all of them independent human rights organizations that joined together, and that was basically the start, where we then decided that the secretariat was in Copenhagen because it was politically feasible to work from there. One could not open an office in the South because of censorship and so on. But our first president was Abdelaziz Benani from Morocco, the president of the Moroccan Human Rights Organization. And our first vice president was Stefano Lecinski from the Italian Helsinki Committee. So the whole region was presented, and half of the board was then from the North and half from the South, meeting on an equal basis.